Welcome to the shed. I thought today I might do a little video on making some arrows and how to cut arrows, and also fletching arrows if you like to make your own arrows for your bow. This is the way that I do it here in the shed. So firstly, you select your arrow shaft that you want to use. I've got my new dozen arrow shafts here. These are Carbon Express Predator arrows. I always use quality name brand arrow shafts, have over the years, and there's a few things that you need to be able to do this sort of work. And that's, one for a start, is a little high speed saw, which this is just a little Dremel. So that's for cutting the carbons. You'll need a respirator. You certainly don't want to be sucking in carbon dust. A pair of safety glasses, a little bit of masking tape, pencil and a knife. And when we get into the fletching of the arrows, I use a Bits and Burger fletching jig here, and also need some isopropyl alcohol for cleaning the arrow shafts down, and a little bit of Loctite, either 401 or 406, doesn't really matter. But some of us have to cut our arrow shafts because they come full length, and there's no point having 2 or 3, 4 inches of extra arrow hanging out the front of the bow. But you do have to make sure that you know your arrow length that you want to cut the arrows at, and I sort of recommend having it around about 2 inches possibly, or an inch past the front of the riser of the bow, because you never know if you want to change the style of broadhead. If you're going to shoot broadheads or hunting, there's different styles of broadheads. You got this one here, which is forward of the ferrule, and then this style of broadhead here is actually extends back past back down the arrow shaft, so that actually can come back into your riser of your bow, and you need to make sure that that's going to clear and not interfere with the riser of your bow when you draw your bow. So we'll see how we go. And we will mark off these arrow shafts. I've already got a predetermined length. I know my length, and I've got marks here on the bench to here. I'll put the arrow shaft along the bench, and I've got my little mark here on the bench. Just simply put a line on the arrow shaft where it's going to be cut. You can see it there. And then as simple as I use a little bit of masking tape, and I make sure I put the masking tape on the part that I'm going to cut off, but I line the edge of the masking tape up where the pencil mark is, and just wind it round. So that's nice and round there, and then I'm going to cut straight through there, off there, and my arrows are now the correct length for myself. Rightio, now that the end's all taped, there's my mark there. All we're going to do is I just cut the excess off here first, just so I've got nice access to the line, and then I'll sit that on the vise here and just slowly rotate it and spin and cut through that shaft, and then I'll use the end of the Dremel there, the wheel, just to square off the very end of the shaft so it's nice and square, so when we put our insert in, it sits nice and flush. You have to use high speed gear for cutting carbon. You can't just go and use a grinder and a thin disc on a grinder. If it catches on the shaft, It can break and fracture the shaft, putting a split in it, and then possibly could go through your hand if you go and shoot it. You don't know. So you always use high-speed gear when cutting carbon, and that's what most people use, a Dremels or a proper little arrow cutter that's in the professional shops. But anyway, we'll get into it, and we'll cut this one to size. It's basically as simple as that. A nice clean cut and a nice squared off end. Easy. So we better do the rest. I've cut all my shafts. The camera shut down so you didn't get to see that, but I'll show you on another set of shafts. But all the shafts now, a dozen arrow shafts have all been cut to the correct length. All the same there. Now what we need to do is clean out the dust out of them. Just like that, done. Now what we'll do is, before we stick the insert in, we're going to get some alcohol and just on a little bit of rag and just wipe down in the front of the shaft there, so that the when you glue them in, that the glue takes to the carbon. Right. We're going to get ready for fletching, so I will show you what we need there. I like to make sure that the nocks are all lined up the same on all the shafts, so that it's in exactly the same place. You can feel on the nock, on some nocks there's a little tiny lump, a little bump. That's just a little index there, and I try and line them up with the lettering there. So using a little nock tool. Turn the nock around until it lines up. This is just a personal thing for me. I like to have them all exactly the same. It just puts the lettering of the arrow shaft out to the side. Rightio, next step is I've just got a little bit of superfine emery, little emery pad, a little bit of foam. You can use a scour pad, like a green scour pad. But what we want to do is we just want to rough up the end of the arrow shaft here. This is just how I do it, but I just find your veins adhere to the shaft a lot better if you do it this way. So simple as just wrapping it around the shaft and just spin the shaft a little bit in your hand, and it's just a bit of a sand up and down. That's all it is. Just rough it up. If you're only using short veins, you don't need to sand too far down the shaft at all. I'm using 4-inch veins, so I'm sanding a little bit further down the shaft. You never know what's on the arrow shafts, whether there's a little bit of wax, fingerprints, things like that, like oil from your skin, and you'll find that the veins will fly off at some stage if you haven't prepared the shaft correctly. So we'll give them all a rough up. Rightio, nice roughed up arrow shafts. So all we need to do, a little bit of alcohol on the rag, wipe off the carbon dust off the arrow shaft. Only do one at a time, and don't touch it again with my fingers there. Make sure, now I've got my little fletching jig here. I'm going to fletch with 3 veins. 3 veins, they're 4-inch VeinTech veins. So put the little cock vein up there. I've got the jig here, little vein in there. I've got lines marked on the jig here, so I know where the end of my vein goes. That gives me 19mm, about 19mm back to the nock on there. So just a matter of with the alcohol, always give the vein a little wipe as well. Make sure that there's no wax or anything on that vein. Bit of Loctite, run it down the vein, down along the vein, all lined up. Push the back end of the clamp down onto the arrow shaft, and then the front end. I'll just put a little bit of pressure on there, to force out the glue. Trying to keep my fingers away from the arrow shaft where I'm going to stick the veins on. I like to hold it for about 20 seconds. Rightio, that's our little cock vein done. So now the other vein, with alcohol, wipe the vein. The end of the clamp right down on the bottom of the jig here. Push the very end of the vein on. Alright, just clamp down and hold. Turn him around to the next index. There's our now fletched arrow shaft. What I like to do then is just on the very end of the vein, put just a little dob of Loctite, and on the back end there, and there we have it. We've got our little vein shaft. I don't stick these ends in because I shoot broadheads. I screw the broadhead onto these first. Make sure they're tight because I like my broadheads standing straight up and down like that out the front of the bow, not on the side like that. So if you go gluing them in before you screw your broadhead on, it could end up anywhere basically by the time you tighten it up, and I don't like using little O-rings or anything like that behind there. So I always make sure that mine are screwed onto the broadhead first, the broadhead that I'm going to use, and then I'll lay it down nice and flat on the nock, mark the very top of the shaft there, put my broadhead in and line it up to that mark. Simple as that. So I'll go and do the others now. Also, the beauty of fletching your own arrows, you can choose what vein you want to use, whether it's little blazer veins, here. These are my wife's arrows. Right. These are VeinTech. They're the Swift series. They're 2.75 inches long, so they're a nice little vein. Here's the same Swift series, but I've got 4 veins on there, just trialing out 4 veins for better stability using big fat broadheads. Also puts a lot of spin on the arrow. You see the 4 veins down there, and the best part about using your fletching jig here, it's all adjustable, so you can actually get the offset on your vein to your shaft so that you can put a lot more helical on the vein. I run a lot of helical on mine because I'm using quite large, long, flat and fat broadheads, which affects the arrow flight, whatever. So I want my arrow, when it comes out of the bow, to start spinning straight away and spinning pretty fast to make sure that the front end of the arrow there is going in the right direction. So this back end here is spinning and steering the front end of the arrow. So that's the beauty of using your own fletching jig. You can manipulate your veins to suit whatever you're doing, whether it's target archery or if you're hunting. And I do a little bit of both, but I just stick to the one that I can use for hunting and target archery. Bring them round, find your index on your nock into the Bitzenberger jig here. I've had this jig for 20 years, so great investment if you're into making, or you're into archery and you want to make your own arrows, which I have done over the last 20 years, wooden arrows and carbons. Never really much been into the alloys, but certainly an investment that pays off. You get to fletch your own arrows. You don't have to run back to the archery shop every time. If you destroy a vein or something like that, it flies off or somebody shoots it or whatever, at least you're able to come home and bang a new vein on there. or you can take it with you if you're out the bush, if you're out hunting for a couple of weeks, if you're in Cape York or something, and all of a sudden you've 6 of your arrows veins have all come off. Well, you can fix your own arrows while you're up there. Rightio, next step is, what we're going to do is we're going to glue in some broadheads, or the inserts, into these arrow shafts, and I am going to trial on these arrows these little broadheads. They're a Ramcat 125 grain, and I haven't used them before, but apparently they're pretty good. Normally I use 2-blade broadheads, but I want to try something different, and they tell me these are very good. So for a start, what we do is we get the arrow insert here, and we wind it onto the insert. A pair of pliers, and just make sure that's nipped up there. Like that. The reason we need to do that is because this is being 3-blade like that, and our fletchings are 3 fletchers. When it actually goes in, you can line it up in here. You can line it up, the blades, with the fletchers. So put one at 90 degrees when it's knocked. So the idea is to get those blades there to line up with our fletchings, so that when this thing hits an animal and is driving through the animal, our fletchers are actually going to line up and match the entry hole of that broadhead has created. So that's the theory. I'm going to give them a go, but like I say, normally I use 2-blade broadhead, but this is why I don't glue these in until last. So the first step is to take that out, lay my arrow on the bench, on the nock, where it attaches nice and flat to the bench there, and then mark the top of the shaft. So 12 o'clock on the top of the shaft. I know that's 12 o'clock there. Okay, now that we've got the top of our shaft marked, it's as simple as we need to clean the dust out of the shaft, inside the shaft here. So we just get a little bit of rag, put a bit of alcohol on that, and over the end there, and just poke him in, give him a spin. Clean out, make sure that they're nice and clean inside there. Right. And make sure that our little insert, give it a squirt of alcohol. That'll dry off pretty quickly. It's pretty warm today. You've got to be very careful, these things are razor sharp. So, but anyway, I'll mix up a little bit of, this is 5-minute Araldite. Very hot today, she's a bit runny. This stuff you got to be quick. I only mix just enough up to do. You get three arrows done, and it's already going off, so you can't mess around with it. Once you start mixing it, I like just to put a little bit just inside the shaft, like this first. And then get my head here, just lay some along the insert, not right up the very end of it, because when you push it in, it will force its way in there anyway. So putting it on, and I'll just spin the shaft, move it backwards and forwards, locate the head where it's got to be, and then just run my eye along it to make sure that blade out the side is at 90 degrees. Wipe off that excess there, and I'll just put that as, you can give it a bit of a spin test, make sure it's spinning beautifully, which it is. Put that aside. To the next. Give it a spin, beautifully, spins beautifully. So there we have it. We've got three heads now on these arrows here to try. Once that's dry, I can unscrew the head off it, make sure I clean all the rest of the glue off it, and I can screw in a field point or whatever I want. And so I can go and practice with these things. But anyway, that's how we fletch up and customise our own arrows. Hope that helps.